Good evening, folks, and welcome. I really appreciate you all coming out. I saw about 24 registered myself this afternoon. I saw that, and I was really pleased with it. And I just figured, oh, we might have the teens or something tonight because of the weather. But thank you all for coming. My name is Wayne Miller. I'm the author of these 3 books you see on the table. But tonight, I was asked to speak about the first one, and the first one is a heck of a story. It's unlike almost any story you've ever heard in your life, okay? And it helps if I turn on my little device. So, why do people ask me to speak? I was an ATF agent from the first day of June 1976 until July 2001. 25 years and a week. The week, why? End of the pay period. You know? So, all of it was in Boston. I was lucky. I grew up in Rhode Island, and when I applied, I knew it was going to be a Boston position. But a lot of guys get transferred along the way, or if they move up, if you want to go into management, you have to move before you can try to come back to the city you want, like Boston. The ATF Arson Task Force. I'm going to explain more about it, but it started in Boston in March of 1982, and I volunteered for it. So for the first 4 years, I strictly worked gun cases. In bang, boom, burn. The bang is for gun cases. I had a .46 machine gun seizure in Walpole, probably the largest M16 seizure in New England. And then I end up with something called the largest arson case in the history of the country. It's not because I was a great agent. It's just because I was out there just doing the work, and things sort of fall in your lap when you do the work. Okay? So Bang Boom Burn has 2 bombing cases. One killed a Boston police officer. Another one, crazy case in New York State. 50-year-old man dating a 30-year-old American Indian woman. And her family didn't like him. He sent 6 Christmas packages to her family. 4 of them exploded, killing 5 people. So I don't even know how you can think of that stuff, okay? And then there's about 14 more arson cases. There's one in there from Dover, Mass., one from Westwood, one down the Cape, and then a couple out-of-state ones, all sorts of different cases. But I volunteered for the Arson Task Force when it was formed in 1982, and I stayed there my 19 years until I retired. A CFI, Certified Fire Investigator. ATF started their program to teach whoever wanted to volunteer for that program. See, I was never in the military. I never learned not to volunteer. That's what they told me. So I volunteered to be a CFI. And certified fire investigators are those people who go inside and figure out where the origin of a fire is and the how. Good evening. Just started 2 minutes ago.
Excellent. Thank you.
So the ATF program, it was a 2-year program. You still had to do cases, but you had to go to at least 100 fires in 2 years and have a certain amount of training. And then every year you got recertified. You had to go to a minimum of 25 fires every year and get something like 160 hours worth of training. I now have, after 37 years altogether, I have 3,000 hours of training and at least 1,800 hours teaching. And I'll confess right now, I've set 100 fires myself. Training fires. Okay. I've had the gear on, I've been inside until the fire starts coming over your head, and then you back out. We computerized them, we videotape fires, worked with University of Maryland, who has a great fire protection program, stuff like that. So the federal government did the right thing, in my opinion, for one of the few times ever, and supplied money and expertise, and the ATF CFIs are about the best in the country. And then I also got certified by the International Association of Arson Investigators. You had to qualify to take a test, and every 5 years you qualify again, re-qualify. That's who I worked for. We were in Marlborough after I left ATF, and then we were in Uxbridge, and I spent almost 18 years with them. They called me a fire and explosion analyst instead of investigator. And I analyzed fires and explosions, even one in Italy, in Rome, but I didn't go. I did it all by previous reports and photographs. And the people I represented got acquitted because they were convicted in Italy of causing a fire that killed people. And we represented them here. The Italian authorities in that case did not do a good job. I investigated over 2,300 fires and explosions. Seems like a lot, but divided by 37 years. And how do I know that number? ATF required us to keep the number. And then, when I went on the private side, desk blotter calendar, every single fire I went to, I put the address, the case number, and I counted each one. About 100 of those are explosions of every type. Bombings, natural gas, propane, gasoline, combustion explosions, dust explosions, all different types. And I testified as an expert over 40 times. Now, does that seem strange to you? You went to 2,300 incidents, but you only testified as an expert 40 times. Some fires are undetermined. You don't know what happened, so you're not going to testify in anything. Some, if they're civil cases, people agree and settle out of court. Federal and state court for crimes, some of the same thing. People settle. People take their 10-year sentence rather than 20-year sentence. You know, that type of thing. So that's why I only testified 40 times. And I worked with other people on these cases, and some of them testified, and they didn't want to duplicate testimony. And people invite me because I wrote a book. I never had social media in my life until I wrote the books in 2019. And my website is burnbostonburn.com. And I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn. I was on a couple others. I disappeared off those. I don't have the energy to do it and keep up the publicity type of thing and the advertising and everything else. But I do let people know where I'm going next, that type of thing. I put it on my website and I put it on Facebook. And you know, I keep getting invitations. The one I just got for Ohio just came in a couple days ago. And I just got invited. The guy showed up last week. I did Upton Historical Society. And a firefighter came in and said, I can't attend. Can I buy one of your books? And maybe you want to do District 7 firefighters? Sure, okay. So I'm going to do them in November, so 14th, I think. So it keeps me busy. I have a lot of fun. As you'll be able to hear, I get very juiced up still by these stories. I never wanted to be a firefighter in my life. What's strange is I'm married for my second time, but we're coming up on 30 years in another few weeks. And my wife's father was a Captain Revere, and her brother was a Captain Revere. And she lived in East Boston in a 3-decker. I put in the book back and forth, I go triple-decker, 3-decker. But a Norwood firefighter who's since passed away, he said, Wayne, they're not triple-deckers, they're 3-deckers. A triple-decker is a sandwich. So most of the time I'm going to say 3-deckers. You know, we have those 3-family homes that rise up. And it's unusual. Other parts of the country don't have anything like that, you know. So, but Joyce, my wife, she lived in East Boston in a 3-decker, and 4 of them burned down one night, and hers was the second one. My stepson was 5 years old at the time, and at night they had to come down in the dark. And we met at a singles place. Now, how do you get firefighter background in your family and live through a fire and end up with a fire investigator? Nothing but fate, right? So, the cover, by the way, is done by my son-in-law, Mike Clark. He did Bang 2. a lot of times people walk up to me and say, I want to buy your book. I say, which one? Because they look a little bit alike, these first two. Second one's not that much different, but that one was done by a woman from the internet. I was sitting in my favorite easy chair, and there's a sliding glass door is here. And I'm on a Zoom call with my editor and a class. And half of my face is light, and the other half is dark. And right in the middle of the class, I said, that has to be in the cover. And there's reasons for that, the good and the bad, and there's another big twist. There's a reason for that, okay? But I said, that has to be, just like that. That's how the cover came to me. But this one here, I love how Mike put the flames up through the old Boston. And if you read the top, this picture was taken by one of the arsonists, by the way. And
Wow.
I'll make my second confession. Greg Bemis, I will talk about Greg a lot. Greg Bemis and I have a professional, friendly relationship. Matter of fact, I'll take him out for his birthday next week. He did 10 plus years in prison, but I also interviewed him for 200 to 400 hours after he decided to cooperate and get him ready for 2 trials. And he wrote a journal, 163-page, single-spaced, typed. I know how Greg talks. I interviewed all these guys eventually, okay? And I know how he talks today. I know how he talked then. And what he put in his journal. If you read Burn, Boston, Burn, you read dialogue between the bad guys. In true crime, you don't normally get dialogue,
Right.
you know, but it's not made up, it's real. I know exactly the words that they use and how they talk to each other and everything else. So, it's very unusual, but Greg took this picture, and you read up here, the largest arson case in the history of the country. Now, if you open up to the title page inside, it has quotation marks around that. And I'll explain that in a moment. Explosive, true crime, gun, bombing, and arson cases from federal agents' career. Won't get that today, but that's why I put the M16 there. This is on loan to me, this picture, a friend of mine, Roger Conant. That's the Worcester warehouse fire. That's the last chapter in the book. That chapter is through my eyes and what was going on in my head. I was there that night, that Friday night, December 3rd, 1999. I spent 10 days there, and I'm one of 3 people that wrote the report for that fire. And it's the one that tears my heart out. Every time I instruct on it, I have a whole program on it. And that last chapter is meant to tear your heart out. And the burn part is those fires I was talking about. Flames and Secrecy is a jump to fiction, but it's a serial arsonist murderer who only targets women because of mommy issues, you know, because of things that happen. But the unique part about that book is I put a lot of my life in there. My mom was from Austria. That's in there. She was in the Hitler Youth. She had no choice when the Nazis took over Austria. She was there during World War II and in her school years. And she grew up that way. And she lived her life like a Nazi drill sergeant the rest of her life. She was very strict, very tough, not a real loving type of person. And that's in there. And my biological father left when I was 6 months old. And I met him when I was 42. And I found out something the day I met him that changed our family dynamic. There's something just like that in the book, but not the same as in my family. But so there's some of my real life stuff in that book. And I do a whole program on that, and I get the audience involved. I read like 2 paragraphs. Is this real, or did I make this part up? And so it's a lot of fun to do that. So the subtitle, Largest Arson Case in the History of the Country, should have had on the cover quotation marks, because when the arrests were made in 1984, William Weld, everybody old enough would know, our former governor, but he was a U.S. attorney back in the 80s, and he made that quotation to the press. This was the largest arson case in the history of the country. We have 9 guys in the conspiracy. 8 of them were arsonists out of the 9. And they set 264 buildings on fire in 2 years. That's a lot. Now, other cases since then. John Orr was the most famous arson investigator in California. John Orr is the most famous arsonist in California. He got caught in the mid-90s, I think it was. 3 people died in one of his fires, and he never confessed. They tried to backtrack a little bit, and they think over 25 years he might have set 1,000 fires, but we don't know that. Okay, and it's all type. I'm not going to minimize it because you've seen the wildland fires in California, how devastating they are, but he set fires like that. Thomas Sweat, there's a good book from a friend of mine, Solving for X. In the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. Thomas Sweat got arrested in the mid-90s by multi-agencies, and he confessed to about 350 fires, including sheds, cars, buildings. Now, I told you we have 264 buildings. We also have a minimum of 100 dumpsters, so that would put it at the mid to upper 300s. But we have a giant conspiracy that held together for over 2 years. Nobody else had that. So I still kept it on the front of the book, although if I do the cover again, I might change it. But right now it reads, the largest arson case in the history of the country, period. Okay. How many people really know ATF?
Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
And you see them at every shooting nowadays. You see their jackets. Okay, they made us start wearing those billboards around the beginning of the 80s. You know, but ATF goes all the way back to the 1790s in a sense. Alcohol and tobacco was taxed, and they had a unit that enforced that, regulated that. Then, as you know, Al Capone and the Prohibition era, the Gun Control Act of 1930 or something came around to try to minimize all those Tommy guns and stuff like that that was happening back in those days. And then in 1972, the alcohol tax unit of the 1930s became ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, their own individual agency within the Treasury Department. After 9/11, they're now absorbed into Justice Department, and who knows how long they're going to even exist at this point. But they had the firearms laws and the explosive law, 1970 Explosive Act. And we started working fires under the Explosive Act. But then Ronald Reagan in 1982, if you damage or destroy a building by means of explosive or fire, the law changed by 2 words, or fire, and we got that jurisdiction. We assist state and locals. ATF couldn't exist on gun cases or these fires or bombings without state and local people. We work hand in hand, side by side, with the state fire marshal in the different towns and the different cities. And I say we, I've been out for 24 years already, but it's in your blood, you know, type of thing. So, we would go and offer our assistance. We have more manpower, we have more money, we have more, eventually, expertise. Yes, state fire marshal, one trooper working in the fire marshal's office might have seen 100 fires in a year, where I had just started in the 80s, and he would teach me some of what he's learned, and then through the classes and the burnings and stuff like that, I would learn more and eventually teach them some of what I learned, you know? So, that's where we came from. Anybody remember the DuPont Plaza? New Year's Eve, 1986 in Puerto Rico. This is the first time that the ATF National Response Team, which I volunteered for again, it's a team of about 10 to 12 agents, explosive experts, chemists, evidence tech, photographers. We respond any place in the country within 24 hours. And in this case, it was Puerto Rico. I was on an 8 a.m. flight on New Year's Day. Changed kind of New Year's Eve plans and New Year's Day plans, but that's what happens. I was down there for 8 days. 97 people died in that hotel, and most of them were in the casino. 87 out of the 97 died in the casino, and it's pretty horrific stuff. Meridian Bank building, almost nobody knows that fire by name, but if you watch the movie Philadelphia, Tom Hanks, and really pay attention to when there's like a helicopter ride around the William Penn, you can see the statue on top of the State House. And it can't be State House because it's in Philadelphia, but it must be City Hall or something. Yeah. And you can see a boarded up high rise. The building was 32 stories, 3 firefighters died around the 24th or 25th floor. ATF was not invited, so to speak. The team was not invited because Philly wanted to do their own thing. Only 3 of us were invited, and I'm one of 3 people that wrote the report for that fire. And Worcester Cold Storage. Everybody here knows Worcester Cold Storage. Again, I responded that night, worked there for the next 10 days, and I was one of 3 people that wrote that report on that case. And again, just watching the firefighters, and I'm so close to firefighters these days rather than to law enforcement in a sense. Even so, I carried a gun for 25 years and I was law enforcement. So back to Burn, Boston, Burn. Boston was started to be known as the arson capital of the country because we had so many fires in the 70s and into the 80s. The Back Bay had a lot of fires, and some of the brownstones, conversions of apartments to condos. Try to evict tenants. Well, if you have a fire, you can evict them a lot easier. That type of thing.
I guess so.
Yeah. So, what was going on? The feds said the local people need help. Normally, you would think fires are a local problem, and they are. But think of Foxborough, say. Again, is anybody firefighter know who walked into the room, retired or nope? Foxborough might have 1 fire investigator. I knew Ed Noonan really well. He was a fire investigator, an electrician. And they might only have 2 weeks of actual training, that type of thing. City of Boston had an arson squad, and they had 4, 5, 6 guys, and several of them were ready to retire or had been hurt on the job and couldn't work on a truck or an engine anymore. So they put them in the arson squad until retirement age. So their amount of expertise was all over the country. It was unbalanced. And so that's why ATF started working fires. So we would assist those people with interviews. We're trained criminal investigators, so we know how to interview people. They would teach us about fires, and eventually we'd work together. Police, fire, feds, state, that type of thing. I love showing this picture. Now all you people know Boston well enough. Downtown, say, the Back Bay, Fenway Park, Castle Island, Southie, South End. Down here, JFK Libraries in Dorchester, so isn't the Franklin Park Zoo. You got Roxbury over in this area. You come down here, West Roxbury, Rosendale. I saw Mattapan down here. There's still Dorchester, and then you get into Quincy, that type of thing. That's pretty much the neighborhoods. I didn't mention Charlestown, but I don't see it on there actually. The reason I like to show this one is because of this one. That's only the first 100 fires set by this group of people. I couldn't put any more pins on it. It really become a blur. And they also started going outside the city because we were doing surveillances in the city. So they went all over the place. And I didn't want to make it any bigger, but that's pretty impressive. Now, again, you probably know going 128, 138's in Canton. And if you go north, it becomes Route 28 and Blue Hill Avenue. Runs right through the city. And as you can see, they use Blue Hill Avenue regularly. They went left and right, left and right, left and right. Now folks, if you read the book, again, some of the real readers of the world who aren't fire people and stuff like that, they said, wow, this is sort of like Groundhog Day. this is a little bit too much, too repetitious. I left the repetition, I didn't put 264 fires in there, but I left the repetition so you could see that they were out there regularly. And I'm gonna tell you how regularly in a minute. They were out there, and the investigators were running around. Boston Fire was doing most of the origin and cause at these buildings, and we were working with Boston and doing interviews, and it was a crazy time. And I wanted you to see that in the book, how crazy it was, you know. Greg, I mentioned Greg. He grew up in the Acton-Stowe area. He was they're all fire buffs. Fire buffs have legitimate organizations called like the Boston Sparks Association. Last night I spoke for the Atlanta Metro fire buffs on a Zoom call last night. And they're hobbyists. They're no different than watching the Bruins and Red Sox, except they collect fire equipment, photographs, fire engines, helmets, anything to do with fires. And some people run to fires and watch them and photograph live fires. And that's why you're gonna see these pictures that I'm gonna be showing you are all from Bill Noonan, who was a Boston fire photographer, 35 plus years. And he gave me his photos for use, and they're in the book. But, so Greg grew up wanting to be a Boston firefighter. And he got a radio by the time he was like 10 years old. He listened to Boston Fire. And he paid close attention. He knew more about a lot of things than some of the Boston firefighters did. Lenny was his best friend out there. Greg became dispatch for police and fire out there, and then a Boston Housing Authority police officer. Lenny went into the Air Force after the first fire and became a firefighter in the Air Force. Robert Gablewski, full-time Boston police officer, but wanted to be a firefighter. Donald Stackpole owned a security company with a trailer in South Boston. Ray Norton was a full-time Boston firefighter. Joe Gorman, he grew up as a fire buff, but he wanted to be a state trooper. He's the only guy that actually didn't want to be a firefighter. But he hung with these guys because they all had the same interest in fires. Wayne Sandin, he wanted to be a firefighter, but he was a Boston Housing Authority police officer and then a lieutenant with them. So, Mark Svenby worked for Donald Stackpole as a security guard. He joined in 1983 in the conspiracy. And I'll only mention Chris Damon once. Chris was the only one not an arsonist in this group. Chris grew up across the street from Donald Stackpole, and he moved to Cincinnati, Ohio, when the first one who got arrested, Gablewski, was maybe gonna go to prison. Donald Stackpole said, hey, I got Chris Damon. I called him and he said he'll take you out at his house and get you a job. So he joined the conspiracy to make Bobby a fugitive. Now, the reason I say Bobby instead of Robert Gablewski is, again, it's another guy I interviewed for 200 to 400 hours and prepped him for trials. You spend a lot of time, so you become somewhat friendly in a weird situation. What is a conspiracy? Who wants to join in with me? Steve, as you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Tonight, when we're done, there's a dumpster behind the building. You and I will burn that. Okay?
Sure. Now that's a conspiracy.
No? We're just talking. That's not a conspiracy. You know a gas station that's open after 9 o'clock? You go to the gas station, I'll get some matches, and I'll meet you there at 9:30. Now, when he gets the gas, and I bring the matches, we have now committed an overt act in furtherance of the crime. And now it's a crime, okay? You can talk all you want, but when you do something in furtherance of that crime, you can be charged with both the arson or attempted arson and conspiracy at the same time. Robert Gablewski, Mark Svenby, and this lump, That's how I refer to him, as Donald Stackpole. He was about 5'8", a bit overweight, and physically unfit, and he had a felony record. He couldn't have been a firefighter, I don't think, if he really wanted to be. Why did these guys set their fires? This really was their primary reason. Prop 2.5. Most of the people who own houses and everything know what Prop 2.5 does. It was voted in by the citizens of Massachusetts on November 4th, 1980, the same day Greg Bemis turned 20, by the way. And President Reagan got elected that day. Very simply, you have a $100,000 piece of property, it can only be taxed at $2,500. That's the simple explanation for it, okay? But what did that have to do with these guys? What it did, I'll give you Boston as the primary example. Cities and towns, a lot of the older ones, Boston's not like this today, but had so many old abandoned buildings worth nothing. So the city taxes were gonna go down. So their payroll for city workers, who's the usual suspects on that? It's usually the teachers, firefighters, police, some DPW, that type of thing. They get laid off. Boston lost 600 firefighter positions in a year and a half out of 1,700. That's like 38% of the fire department gone. Foxborough have 2 firehouses. Anybody know?
Just
One? Well, Franklin has 2. I live in Franklin. Franklin has 2. So imagine if they had to close one, and they reduced the number of guys on a piece of apparatus from 3 to 2 all the time. And Boston did this. And they closed 22 firehouses. 22 out of 48. Almost half. Okay? And so what happened was Greg in particular went to one fire where 2 people died, and he went to another fire where 2 boys died. Right around the corner, the firehouse closed, giant letters painted on the door, closed, that type of thing. So because the firehouse is closed, that could be the reason that those people died, okay? So it affected him. His mother died when he was 16 of cancer, and he was very close. He used to take him to fires. You know, they had the horn in these small towns that would sound for call firefighters and stuff. And so they'd go. It's sort of like town entertainment in a sense to watch a fire. I mean, if you drove by one today, you'd probably stop and look, type of thing. So she died of cancer. His dad moved away to Maine a year later, and Greg ended up living with Len and Kendall because his dad didn't want to be here anymore. So he wasn't the strongest individual, and he needed a father figure, and he needed friendship and stuff like that. This is the first fire they set. It's in Roxbury, February 19th, 1982. Their initial buildings that they agreed on setting were unoccupied, uninhabited, vacant type of things. This was a vacant warehouse. They were doing these 3-deckers, favorite targets. Why? Because they figure firefighters don't have to go inside if they're vacant. Not like the Worcester warehouse, which was vacant, but they went in because they heard homeless people inside. But if they're outside, there's less likelihood that they're gonna get hurt. But they could have a vehicle accident on the way, a lot of things can happen. So, but they also hit these buildings because, anybody know what gas shingles are?
Gas?
Asphalt shingles, the nickname is gas shingles. That's why I started with that. The shingles you have on your roof.
Yeah.
In the 1940s, Boston and other places that around New England used asphalt shingles all the way down the sides.
Yeah.
And if you put a lighter to them long enough, it'll get up to the roof line in a matter of 5 minutes. So they used a little device, a little incendiary device. And back in the early 80s, I wouldn't tell lay people what the device was, but court documents, it's in the book. The internet can tell you anything you want to know. today, so they had a lunch bag, a brown paper lunch bag, walking down the street from Dorchester, Roxbury, Jamaica Plain, in the middle of the night. Who would pay any attention? Inside that bag was a Ziploc baggie with about a pint or so of Coleman lantern fuel, very volatile liquid. Some tissue, and then, when they got to the objective, inside or outside, either those gas shingles on the outside or inside with a lot of debris in these old abandoned places, they place the device and take a matchbook and a cigarette, lit, and interlace it. And when the cigarette burns down, it ignites the matches, which ignites the paper bag and the tissue, and then melts the plastic bag and the gases from the volatile liquids ignite. I love telling people, but wood doesn't burn, folks. It's the truth. How many people think I'm nuts? Raise your hand. Wood does not burn. Liquids, gasoline does not burn. It's the vapors. It's the gas form. That's why you put newspaper in your fireplace, maybe some kindling, okay, and you take your match. You can heat up the newspaper to its ignition temperature. It's actually giving off gases, and that's what ignites. When you watch the logs burn, I ruined it for my wife. It's not romance anymore. I'd say, see that smoke on the right side of the logs? That smoke's gonna ignite in about 37 seconds. Because look real close to the top of the logs. You'll see like a little blue, yellow. That's actually the gases from the wood that's burning. You have to heat up wood before it actually ignites. It's the gases that ignite. So wood itself doesn't burn. Okay? I know it sounds insane, but it's the absolute truth. So they started with those 3-deckers. Well, let me go back for a second. They started with bricks thrown from a car through windows. Their idea was, in a twisted version of Robin Hood, if we get the police busy with all these petty crimes, they can't investigate real crime. That didn't go over so good. People didn't get angry. The press didn't pick it up. So they went to dumpsters in the back bay. You know, along Charles River, if you're looking at the Boston side, behind all those brownstones is a dumpster. So they would go and put just a cigarette and matchbook, toss in each one, and they'd go on the Cambridge side and watch and listen on the radio what's going on. And firefighters were coming from all over the place to fight them because there were so many, like 10 a night at one time. So firefighters from outside the back bay area would come and they wouldn't know what address they're at or where they were going because they didn't have GPS, you know, that type of thing. So they loved hearing that confusion on the radio. But it didn't get the press involved and the people screaming. So they graduated to the buildings, and that's when they're doing the 3-deckers. And then they did things like this. This is actually a building in Jamaica Plain that they did twice, and that's the cover of the book. Okay? Now, these guys are serial arsonists. So the twisted version of Robin Hood, instead of stealing from the rich, give to the poor. If we burn enough buildings, guys will get rehired. Or how about the Boston Tea Party on steroids? Instead of just dumping tea, if we burn all these places, something's gonna happen, okay? Now, it's just, there's serial arsonists, there's spree arsonists also. Sprees are in a short period of time. These guys set up to 9 fires in one night. They started with 1 in February, then they went to 2, and then 3, and then 1, and then 5, and then back and forth. So, Garden Country serial arsonist, he was in the South Shore. He never set one in Foxborough, but he was over more towards the coast by himself. I worked 3 or 4 different serial arson cases. But this one here is so unique because it has 8 arsonists. So the psychology from these guys, well, you had 600 Boston firefighters laid off. Any one of them could have been angry enough to form together with another friend or something and set fires. We actually looked at the union, which wasn't very popular and stuff like that. Board-up companies. Board-up companies make money for every fire they board up. And there's only 2 of them in Boston. So they make a lot of money. So maybe they were doing it for profit. And how about just John Doe arsonist who likes to burn buildings and that type of thing. So We didn't know the psychology because we didn't know the motive. Obviously, you get multiple fires, you start to get a pattern. These guys, a newspaper started, and I don't like when the newspapers and press media does this. They give bad guys names. Friday night firebug. Mr. Flair. Greg took Mr. Flair for himself. He doesn't know where it came from. The newspapers did it. And he took Mr. Flair for himself. But the fires, yes, were set in abandoned buildings and unoccupied buildings and things like that. Even real businesses, but they're empty at night, so nobody's in them. But unlike the Garden Country, Cyril Larson did some churches and VFWs of American Legion, he broke a rear window and poured gasoline. We never found, well, until he dropped it, what he was breaking the windows with. We didn't know if there wasn't a rock inside or anything like that, but he finally dropped a hammer, and that's in the second book. That's a crazy story too. He dropped the hammer he was using, and that's how we connected him eventually. But these guys, they would set it inside, outside, they would do loading docks, they would do all types of buildings. So it's hard to come up with a real pattern, except we had so many set fires. In these abandoned places, you don't have cooking, you don't have electricity, stuff like that. So once you rule out a homeless person inside making dinner on the living room floor or smoking, once you rule those out, you got arson, okay? Arson is an intentional act. The patterns changed all over. Signatures. Eventually, they took that device I was talking about. We never found that device, not a single component of it. Think about it. You get a decent fire going like these ones you've seen. That takes care of most of the components. Hoses, water, takes care of that. Collapse of buildings, it looks all like that same charred debris. So it's awful hard to find it. But there are signatures, again, like a bomber will make this bomb the same exact way every time. He'll wrap his wires the same exact way every time. The bombing case where Boston firefighter died in 1991 in Roslindale, two guys got convicted. The one who wanted to kill his father and the one he had build the bomb. They were both convicted with none, no physical evidence connecting either one. And they didn't confess either.
How did they convict them then?
And they kind of make that a bad word on TV in a sense. Circumstantial evidence. If you build a pyramid of circumstantial evidence, it's strong, you know, and that's what they did in the case. Profiling. You've heard the word profile rapists, murderers, bank robbers even. You can profile arsonists too. But trying to profile, we didn't know what's going on for the longest time, so it's hard to profile. Here's another one of their fires, a three-family. I love this picture of a firefighter. No water in that hose, it's just flat. He's not gonna put that fire out in this building. Maybe in the exposure over here, maybe they could save that. Each one of these fires had to be investigated as a separate incident. Each time, if there is an owner, you have to interview the owner. You have to interview occupants, eyewitnesses, you know, cabbie coming by or something like that. First firefighters, first police officers, follow the money, loans, banks, insurance. There's a lot of work to be done on each and every one. Now imagine doing it 264 times in 2 years. Even if ATF was involved, I put it down recently, even if ATF was involved in one fire a week, 50-something fires a year to investigate, that's a lot. That's a lot. The motive was just elusive for the longest time. We wanted to think, didn't want to think. Boston particularly didn't want to think it's one of their own. And we worked with Boston every day. We had a lieutenant cross-deputized. He's the only person who ever had a Boston Fire ID and an ATF ID. He had one of our cars. he sat at our desk in our office, and he'd go back and forth, and he could be privy to grand jury information because we deputized him. You know, I'm not supposed to tell you grand jury information, that type of thing. Why is this so different from right away? Each one of you, go ahead, tell me why this is different from way back then.
Everything is digitized now, all the information is digitized.
You guys know what a
Cameras.
regular rotary phone is, or a push-button phone is? A landline?
Yes.
That's all we had in those days.
Mhm.
No cell phones. You had no internet, so social media.
And cameras.
No cameras, big.
um,
Today's cameras almost at every corner and doorbells in half the people's
everywhere
houses,
else.
everywhere. So that's a lot of the reasons right there, that you could not have that same case today. Mr. Flair and his buddies. This fire here, Sparrow Toy. They really graduated on this one. This was a real business, a warehouse, imported toys, stuffed toys and plastics, in boxes, in pallets, stored inside. They set the fire on the rear, on a railroad track. The only place that was combustible, the rest of it was brick, and there was one little section that had tar paper over plywood. They set the device right there. And it carried up into one of those industrial fans, and it carried right inside.
What town is this?
This is Southie. This is 1,000 feet long by 300 feet wide.
So the other places have all been empty up till this one.
Right,
is
this is
actually-
not empty. Nobody's there at night, but it's empty.
And no human is in there, but there are
Yep.
products in
Yep.
there.
Yep.
So what motivated them for that?
To get more attention.
Okay.
That's the same one, that's the same one. And I mentioned the response team already, the history, they started around 1978, 4 teams in the country, Northeast, Southeast, Midwest, and Western teams. Now it's changed around somewhat, I don't know exactly. And we had team members who had to respond quickly. And I eventually became one of the origin and cause specialists. It's a dirty business. It's a business that's not gonna go over to AI. 'Cause you can use AI while you're there, but they can't go into a fire, the computer can't go into the fire scene by itself, and even a robot can't do this. And you have to dig and rake and get dirty and blow black stuff out of your nose for a day or two. Nowadays, they make you wear
Masks.
breathing apparatus. It's awful hard to do that job with the breathing, even with the dust mask on. It's hard. My coldest fire was St. Johnsbury, Vermont, minus 18 degrees for the entire day. My hottest fire that I ever did was only about 95 degrees, but in the attic in Dedham. Who said Dedham? Right on Route 1, they had like a Taco Bell and 2 or 3 other businesses in the little, on the northbound side, in one store, and they had neon lighting. I was on the private side then. I was in the attic for 2 days collecting all the neon lighting components. It would have been probably 2003 or 4.
That was the Wendy's that burnt down.
It wasn't a Wendy's in that one. It was like a sandwich place, like a D'Angelo's almost, a Taco Bell and a donut, maybe ice cream or something. But the neon lighting caused that particular fire, and to collect it, you had to go in the attic and get each piece. And I would be as black as the gentleman's sweatshirt when I came out of there, because I was just so sweaty, and everything stuck to me. But it's also rewarding at the same time. It's a puzzle. It's a puzzle. And if you like to put puzzles together, I like this. This is part of the indictment. Each one of these is one count in the conspiracy. And this is only based on Robert Gablewski, the first guy arrested, who, from his memory, told us about these fires. And this is, okay, number 9 on this list is in March. And you got Dorchester, Charlestown, you got JP, Southie, Roxbury. You can see these bounced all over the place. The last one on this particular list is June 3rd, '82. and that is the Foxboro Toy Company fire in Southie. And the next page of it, I highlight right here, June 11th, they only list 4, but that's because that's all Bobby remembered. That's the night they set 9 of them. That's the busiest night in Boston Fire Department history, even as of today. Okay, and I'll show you a little bit more on these. But the 13th was a busy night. That's what they were doing. They had success. They'd skip a night maybe and then come back and burn another 5 or 6. And the reason I like to show the next page is because of June 25th was a busy night. That's the night my second daughter was born. My first daughter was 14 months old. I'm with my first wife in the hospital and, you know, with my little girls and stuff like that. But my brain is calling Stevie McLaughlin from Boston Fire and calling ATF and trying to figure out anything. Did we get anything? Did you know, any suspects? Anything like that? You know, eventually I got divorced and that might be part of the reason. This is South End. And look how many of these fires are what we call fully involved. If you get it blown out of 1 or 2 windows or something, that's not fully involved. But you're looking at a lot of fully, this is a 100-plus-year-old church. And that's what we call a money shot.
Oh.
Bill Noonan caught that shot as the flames are blowing about 40 to 50 feet out of that 25-foot stained glass window. That's what it looked like the next day. Now, remember Larry Bird? I think this guy's a Larry Bird wannabe. He had the short shorts on from back in 1982. And I know it's black and white, but that's one of the yellow fire trucks, yellow-green. Okay, this is the Boston Fire Historical Society, and they only listed 4 right here. But that is the June 11th, 12 minutes past midnight, a 9-alarm fire in Jamaica Plain, and that's the same building again that's on the cover. 1 o'clock, 1:05 in Dorchester, 3 o'clock, Sydney Street in Dorchester, and 7 minutes past 3 in Jamaica Plain. And remember, they had 5 others of their fires that night, and there was 1 other fire that night. So 10 in Boston that night. And this is a 9-alarm, the largest number of alarms. When you have what they call it, let's say a single alarm, a working fire, you got like 1 engine, you might have a rescue, you might have a chief come out, and maybe a ladder truck. And then 2 alarms, you just about double that. 3 alarms, you almost triple it, and keep going. 9 alarms. That night of Sparrow Toy, they had set a 4 or 6 alarm in Dorchester, about half a mile away from this one. So fire companies were tied up there that ended up going to Sparrow Toy. And the same thing here. Whoops, too far. You know, you had fire companies from all over the place tied up all night long. This is January 1983. Is the Ola brothers, mechanical contractors. But on the 3rd floor was the former office of Box 52, which was one of the Boston Sparks clubs, but they had vacated recently. But on the 4th floor was the Boston Sparks Association. They're located now in an old firehouse just down from the Milk Bottle Children's Museum on Congress Street on the South Boston side of just over there. And it's free. It's a good place to go look. And they ask for people put donation money in a box type of thing. But they lost a lot of memorabilia that night. And the reason for this particular fire is Donald Stackpole and Ray Norton were 2 very caustic guys that not many people liked because they were mean, nasty guys. And they got voted down for being in Sparks. Never could join. Whereas Robert Gablewski, the cop, and Joe Gorman were members. And they planned this fire in great detail. Back to Jamaica Plain again. I can just imagine that chief probably shrugged his shoulders at some point, right?
Oh, yeah, what are you gonna do?
You know, he's got no equipment putting water on it.
Wait.
And we got 3 stories there fully involved. How many we got here? Can't tell. It's either that night or the other night for this one. The building was so big, they hit it twice, and it looked very similar. This one here, I laughed because I thought he was smoking a cigarette.
Yeah, he's talking on them.
He's on the walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason I show Norwood is the Sydney Street fire in Dorchester was the last fire of the night. That was the first piece of apparatus there. 17 miles. So you can imagine how big the fire would get. What could we have done differently? Be more aggressive? I don't know. We tried, we got 2 people from the list. We had a list of maybe about 20 people. You interview, you do timelines, and okay, those 2 people couldn't have set these fires. And you had these other people that you add to the list, and it kept going like that all summer. And we did surveillances in South Boston because they had a rash of fires in Southie. We actually put people on top of the industrial buildings. And we had binoculars and radios and talked to roving mobile units. And they'd stop people in the middle of the night going through the industrial area. What are you doing here? You know, and name, address, all that stuff. That way, but we didn't get a single fire when we were doing our surveillances in Southie. Not a single one. It just so happens Ray Norton was a Boston firefighter who worked at fire headquarters where the arson squad was.
Hmm.
This happens to be Robert Gablewski enjoying himself at a parade on Donald Stackpole, that's him, driving his South Shore Fire Department truck, his own personal fire truck. Doesn't exist as a fire department. Now, because of the surveillance we were doing, as summer progressed, they said, hey, we're gonna screw with investigators. Now, I told you they were doing it because of Prop 2.5. They were doing it for what they thought was a good reason to get guys rehired. But then it became nightly entertainment, adrenaline junkies, and let's screw with investigators, okay? Let's go to Quincy. Let's drive right through city and set 2 up in Chelsea, Revere, Everett area. Let's go to Lawrence, set 3 in one night. Lowell, 3 in one night. And then they went all the way to Fitchburg. Fitchburg's 40 miles south, northwest, okay? That's what one looked like. 4 major fires in Fitchburg in one night. And folks, I haven't told you this part yet, but I just got back from Hollywood. I have a contract for the documentary and a major motion picture.
Are you gonna be in it?
Thank you. Maybe as a walkthrough or something, but they need a 30-year-old investigator for one. That's how old I was. But one of the dramatic scenes that's gonna be in the movie is the night in Fitchburg. They're changing it around a little bit. State police, once the 3rd fire was set that night, Fitchburg police, and they called in the state police, it was all over the place. And these guys had decided to set a 4th fire. And Robert Gablewski, the cop, is running through the woods. And somebody almost dies that night. And it wasn't by fire. And I'm not gonna tell you. You're gonna have to watch the movie or read a book. But it's a very dramatic night. And my original contract was for an 8-part miniseries. And they were gonna have Fitchburg just being one night. But they're gonna have me out there instead of the state police type of thing too. We're gonna amp up the tension a little bit more, you know? Now, at the beginning of the end,
Excuse me, how long did it take for, I mean, talking about fully engaged fire, that prior picture, how long does it take from ignition till that
from
gets to that
the
kind of
time they
image?
put light the device to that, less than a half an hour. Many of them had fire blown out of the 3-deckers in 10 to 15 minutes.
And that's with no further accelerant inside the building?
Nope, whatever's there.
Just natural?
Yep.
Wow.
This is Garrity 2. Garrity lumber was on Reedville, Dedham line. Both fire departments responded. I had the deputy, the chief there, Chisholm, I was good friends with. And Garrity 1 happened 1 month earlier. Lumberyard's big. The first fire looked like that.
Was it theirs?
What's that?
Was it this,
This group. Oh, yeah,
both?
both, yeah. They liked it so much the first time they went back.
Getting a rerun, huh?
They have more lumber now.
Now, here's where Nat Whittemore comes in. Now, if I do this, folks, I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna cancel that completely. I'll open it up again. Let me see if that. Yeah. It's gonna work for a change. Okay, this is Garrity 2. Nat Whittemore, the cameraman, he gets paid to do what he loves to do. He's a member of the Boston Sparks. After my wife, Nat was my biggest supporter, okay? And the Boston Sparks, they had the first speaking engagement for me, 240 people, bought 140 books that night. You know. So this is a lumberyard. You can see those are piles of
Yeah.
plywood. And the flames are going, what, 100 feet above the building? Nat Whittemore's got his camera. He's with Ed Fowler from Cambridge Fire Department. They split up. Nat comes around a lumber pile, and he hears a god-awful noise. Not from the fire or the engines or anything like that. He hears people, and the people are cheering for the fire. The fire is the home team. There they are. I'll play it back for a second. Tell you what's going on.
Holy crap.
The home team. Robert Gablewski pulls off duty, Army jacket. That's it, waving his gun for about 3 seconds. Donald Stackpole in the middle, Greg Bemis to the right, to our right, Joe Gorman to the left. Now, this is nighttime 1982 equipment. They kept looking to the right because Ray Norton, the Boston firefighter, was on another pile and he didn't get caught on camera. But, is that, what kind of, they could be arrested for being idiots in the nighttime. For nothing else, they're not arsonists, doesn't make them an arsonist just because they're. Back then, fire buffs ran to fire to fire to fire, so it's common to see the same people. These guys got there a little early sometimes. And when Nat swung his camera around and caught Bobby Gablewski waving his gun, they notified Boston PD and ATF and fire department. And we got there the next day to Soldier Field Road. This is the first time that it's actually worked right. Yeah. And we viewed that. And I didn't know the name Gablewski. Stackpole, yes. Ray Norton, yes. And Boston Fire guys knew them. But now we know who Greg Bemis is and stuff like that. So my partner and I, a few days later, knocked on Gablewski's apartment door in Weymouth. He invited us in, sat down, he lied right to our face, like we're talking over dinner or just a conversation right here. Not nervous, nothing. In his living room, right over there, Bill Murphy gets up, puts on his overcoat like Columbo, and he says, my grandfather makes lamps or bird cages or something out of those things. A firebox, you know? They could be different colors. They look like a little birdhouse in a sense. In Boston had what they call call boxes. You open them, you could actually talk to fire alarm and say, I got a fire on Quincy Street, something like that. Or you pull, and it gives an indication. This was box 1712. And Billy got up so he could see that number painted right on front. Okay? Gablewski said, yeah, I got that at a flea market. Well, We got a search warrant. We took some very reluctant Boston detectives with us down with Weymouth PD. Went the next day, and he wasn't in. We got let into the apartment by the landlord, and the firebox was still sitting right there. I guess we got no respect. I think if I was asking questions about arson and stuff like that, I might hide something that's related to it. And just because he has a stolen firebox doesn't make him an arsonist, right? But it gives you little leverage. He was taken off the street by Boston PD, put up in what they call a turret, which is dispatch for Boston, and they took his gun away, and that's where he was. And they investigated him for the gun waving and for, he's now being charged, and that is a felony, it's over $250. That's considered stolen property. Everyone. Normally Boston's missing one, maybe two in a year, because a car hits a pole or something like that. 14 were missing that year. These guys started stealing, not just as trophies, but because if you set a fire at A and B Street, when do you want me to quit? I better speed up.
Like that, 10 minutes or so?
Yeah, about 7 minutes, I'll wind it up. A and B Street, you got a fire. B and C Street, you stole a firebox. Now, in these neighborhoods in the middle of the night, most people are sleeping, but if a cab or something, they come by, or somebody come by and you pull a box. But now it's gone. At C and D Street is a closed firehouse. So that's what their goal was. They know how operations are. These guys know Boston Fire. And that fire would grow and grow and grow, right? So they were doing it for good reason. So he came in and he took a polygraph. And he flunked it badly. That's one question I don't think I ever asked him. I can't remember asking him. Why did you bother coming in to take the polygraph? You know? But he did. And his attorney said he can't talk. Now Billy and I, at the time I lived in, let's see, 82? I was in Walpole, I lived. And Billy lived in Weymouth. We're already 8:30 at night, south of Boston. Under Billy's desk blotter was this mimeograph. I know they don't know what that means. But that's how we made copies back in the day, a mimeograph machine. And it had the list of stolen fireboxes. Box 1712 was the first one missing that year. Okay? We raced back into Boston to see that. We didn't need to be in Boston, but we were so excited that we wanted to. That's why we got the search warrant the next day. And he didn't confess because of that. The lawyer, after polygraph, said he can't talk. I said, what the heck do you mean he can't talk? He can't talk. Because of Boston Internal Affairs. By the way, the head of Internal Affairs was Bill Murphy, my partner's father-in-law. Small world. But because of their investigation, which lasted, well, we interviewed him in December of '82. We didn't talk to him again until January 1984. 13 months. So what do? We had to do something. We think we're on the right track, but we got nothing really to go on. Start knocking on other doors. Wayne Sandin wasn't in that video, but we knew he was part of the group. Sandin had 2 little kids. I had 2 little kids. He's law enforcement. I'm law enforcement. Wayne, you want to help? Oh, I don't really know. They did burn a stolen car, one that was stripped in Southie, so they burned that. And I said, well, maybe we're on the right track. So he cast his line for you fishermen. Wayne Miller got on the hook, and I stayed on that hook throughout most of the year of '83. We did have him wear a wire for us in the summertime. We had both a transmitter and a recorder on his body. And neither one worked when we needed them to work. And our tech guy said, they work fine. Maybe shutting it off. And then he kept giving me a little information just to keep me on that hook. But this was big information. You might think these guys are crazy already. Oh, I didn't tell you that they call in bomb scares to get rid of the bomb squad so they could set fire to a building. I didn't tell you that they call in to Fitchburg Fire Department and say, aren't you glad the Boston arsonist is in town? Because they wanted people to know what the reasoning was. Okay? This makes them even crazier. Out of Natick Ford parking lot, they stole a brand-new unmarked cruiser that was supposed to go to Randolph PD. And they took it to upgrade their own personal cars. This is what they rode around in. They rode around in black LTDs, black walls, antenna, looked just like cop car, Impalas, looked just like cop cars. And that's what they rode around. So they stole this LTD, upgraded the headlights, the grills, the taillights, and then dumped it in the 4-Point Channel, that body of water between downtown Boston and South Boston. He dumped it there. Now, he told me this. Why did he tell me? Wayne Sandin was an enigma. He never talked. When he pled guilty in front of the judge, he still never talked. He was supposed to confess to your crimes in front of the judge. We had a new supervisor. He said, Wayne, focus. This is actually Greg Bemis's car. It's all full of barnacles. He dumped it in East Boston. That's Robert Gabluski's car, the one that had the brand new parts on. When it got into a tow lot, somebody burned it, and nobody, absolutely nobody I know or talked to knows who burned it. Okay? An example of one of the fireboxes. We recovered a bunch of them because when people started telling us things, some of them were in the Concord River, some of them were in the 4-Point Channel, and elsewhere. These SCBAs, Greg Bemis burned the State Fire Academy by himself. And he's proud that we have a new State Fire Academy. Okay. Because it was a piece of crap before. But he stole these out of there. Why burn all that good equipment? So Stackpole wanted some of these. Now, they're also, these guys are domestic terrorists, folks, long before the term became popular. This letter looks like Hollywood, right? This was done by Greg Bemis with the okay of the rest of the group, and it is all cutouts. I'm Mr. Flair. You know me as the Friday Firebug. I will continue till all deactivated police and fire equipment is brought back. If abandoned buildings are torn down, occupied buildings will be next. That is a threat. No different than calling a bomb scare or something like that. It's a threat. And it was used in federal court. It was sent to WBZ. They called Boston Fire, picked it up, gave it to Boston PD, checked it for fingerprints, a couple smudges. We had no suspects at the time. So they put it in a file drawer and even so we had working relationships with these guys every day. ATF never knew about it until Robert Gabluski's arrest. And he told us about it. We retrieved it, sent it to our lab. Not that our lab are magicians. They do have some of the best equipment, but now we have a suspect. And they got Greg Bemis's fingerprint in one place only. It's probably on the last piece of tape he used at Christmas time or something like that, you know? So January 12, 1984, my supervisor, the new guy, said, Wayne, focus. Make this case. You're on the right track. So we got Robert Gabluski in Boston Fire Headquarters. He was working upstairs. We got him downstairs with Deputy Superintendent, 2 detectives, myself, and Senior Special Agent Jimmy Karolides, who was a card-carrying actor. He did plays on up in the North Shore, music theater or something like that. And so he did acting, and he did a great job. Another scene for the movie. Jimmy was rotund, very slick back, dark gray, silver, black combination of hair, big black eyeglasses, 3-piece suit. I think it was dark gray with blue stripes. In that beige Boston Fire Department office with a bunch of desks, metal drawers, dim lighting, whole thing. Karolides is walking around saying, you swore to protect the citizens of Boston, and look at you. Instead, you did the opposite. You know, on and on and on and on he went. Bobby's sitting farthest across the room from the doorway. He's not under arrest, and we can interview him about this because it's not the gun waving or the stolen box. So we didn't need representation. We read him his rights. He could get up and walk away. He didn't. I won't give you the whole drama, but he did confess that night. My stomach started churning, my head started spinning. He told us about 20 some odd fires in a matter of half an hour. We got him out of there, brought him over to the ATF office, which was on Battery March, Broad Street in Boston. U.S. Attorney came out in the middle of the night. Another name you're gonna know. Robert Mueller. He was his second assistant under Wells. He came out. He said, you have to place him under arrest. You can't let him go home. He could run, he could tell the other guys, he could set another fire, he could kill himself. So at approximately 3:24 a.m., approximately, I had the luxury of placing him under arrest. And we tape recorded his interview, which was very useful because we didn't get a chance to interview him again for 5 months because his attorney said, we're gonna try to say that you coerced his confession. But that got thrown out in May. But we worked our butts off to try to corroborate. We have to corroborate. Confession can't stand alone. You have to corroborate all that information and stop making a case against the other guys. Okay? So in May, he wore wire. Did undercover for us. And he was fantastic. 17 times, 9 phone calls that we recorded, and 8 in-person meetings. I have some of those, and if someone reads the book, buys the book, and wants that, it goes along with that chapter. You can actually hear what the guys were talking about that he was talking to. And it was very important. Bemis, his mouth was going. He had to plead guilty, you know. So we arrested everybody else on July 25th, '84. I actually arrested Bemis in the early morning hours with a crew. And what type of building was he sleeping in? Did I wake him up at? What type of building was he sleeping in?
3-decker.
3-decker. On the first floor. I walked up the right side of if you're looking at it from the front, and I was looking in every window, and it's July. I tapped on the aluminum frame for the window. The screen was up, the window was open. Greg, it's Wayne Miller. Don't move. I had my gun pointed right at your head. He slowly looked up. And then his girlfriend was sleeping against the wall, and she popped up. It's a good thing my finger wasn't actually on that trigger, and I had a trigger finger, because I think I would let go. But she startled me. She was right against the wall. I had no idea she was there. So we arrested everybody on that day. Even Lenny Kendall was in England. We brought him back to Georgia and then brought him back to Boston. He was in the Air Force. 3 of them got put in the same cell for a while, and Stackpole wanted to murder a couple people, and he had the wherewithal, he had the means to get people to do a murder for him. And that's why Bemis came over. Svenby, Gorman, so that's why I said the dominoes started to fall. And let's see, Ray Flynn, Michael Dukakis, Geraldine Ferrara, super headlines in the paper across the country. So I did interview these guys for 200 to 400 hours, a couple of them who testified, and we went to every fire scene, no matter what it looked like, a vacant lot, a burned out building, a new building, because what did you do? Who were you with? And we put that on tape, and we interviewed them all. And we had transcripts from the undercover that I had to go over and over and over. The only 2 trials, Stackpole in November of '84, and Norton in January of '85. And we worked good 12 hours every single day with, I'm talking at least 10 people working to get all the information we needed for these cases. The case report, the federal case report, was 3.5 inches thick, 6 pounds worth of paper. Working with convicted arsonists, you gotta live with the devil sometimes. I don't know when we would have made this case if we didn't get a confession. 3 weeks long, both trials. Stackpole got 40 years. Wayne Sand, the guy who could have given me information was involved with 50 fires, but didn't tell me that. He only told me about a car that got dumped in the lawn, which helped break the case. Because once, that's what we used in that interview with Gabruski. Now you're gonna be fired and go to prison for having a stolen car and all that stuff. So he went to jail, he spent 23 years in jail. Bemis did 10 years, Gabruski did 10 years. Ray Norton never set a fire to a firefighter, he never set a fire, but he was definitely part of the conspiracy. Did about 6+ years. Sven by about 4 years. Chris Damon, the one who was gonna take him out in Ohio, only did a couple of years, but he did go to prison. Lenny Kendall's the only one who didn't go to prison, but he got kicked out of the Air Force, no longer a firefighter, felony record. Patience, persistence, professionalism, train. Fires are way down, arson fires are way down. Investigators have learned so much more in the last 30 years. ATF Arson Group is no longer, because they have to make cases and there's not enough fires for them to make cases. They have 1 or 2 guys that can work fires, but not the whole group. And state and local guys are so much better than they ever were. I want to read this to you. This was on Chronicle twice. You can find it on the internet. Okay, and it was on, the replay was done February of 2019. This was on November. I personally felt bad. This is like an apology, okay? Now, when you apologize to your spouse or something like that, do you say, but you made me do it? Well, I'm gonna put a but in here because I think it should have been in there. I personally felt bad about the injuries, but until the East Street Military Barracks fire, I didn't tell you, October 2nd, 22 firefighters came through the roof, broke the backs, legs, burns, and that was the most serious of all the fires, injury-wise.
And he's caused some minor injuries?
Most of the, before that,
Oh, okay.
most of them were minor in nature. And when I get firefighters in the room, even if this ceiling starts coming down, what else could have happened to you? You could have gotten serious or fatal. And the members of the group must foolishly rationalize that the good overrode the bad. In retrospect, that was my greatest regret. But, I'm putting a button in, you see it?
Mm-hmm.
But I truly believe to this day that the cutbacks would have been much worse in the passage of the Traeger bill, which got signed by Governor King to give more money back to the cities, towns to rehire people, would not have happened had it not been for our regrettable actions some 35 years ago. So I tell everybody to form your own opinion about Greg, that some people think he should have been hung in prison for life because he could have gotten 470 years. Or he assisted me some with questions. If you have a question that I can't answer, I ask Greg. His journal helped the book. He's going to be part of the documentary. Okay, he can't profit from the book on his own, and so far he hasn't profited off anything. But that's
What
Greg.
does he do now?
What's Greg do?
Yeah, what is his, I mean,
He installs fire equipment. Like,
See, really?
yes,
are you sure you want him?
like your
No.
extinguishers in state buildings in town, stuff like that. We have a contract with his company. That's what he does.
You don't know what company he works with, do you?
I actually don't know the name of it.
Okay, it's not Encore, is it?
I honestly don't know. I never have.
That's where I work.
But he has a different last name because he was in witness protection because he was a cop who testified against other people. So, we don't have time, but there's a lot of good stuff in Bang, and then in Flames, like I say, it's a serial license. You get to actually see why he picks the women that he targets. You get to see him set the fire. You get to see a brief investigation, not to bore anybody with an investigation. And you get some profiling, and there's some really unique twists that have to deal, some of it has to deal with the dark and light. And so it was fun writing it. It came out last fall, and I had a lot of fun doing it. And my writing's getting better. My Boston Burn needs a redo, and I probably will have a redo when they announce the movie. But it's the story that counts. The screenwriter grew up here. His father worked at Logan for 30 years. He's in LA now. One of the production companies, half owner, grew up in East Boston, he's out there. The other one grew up in Beverly, he's out there. And one of the directors is from Westwood, and he's out there. And the screenwriter went to a wedding in Phoenix, Arizona, and he said to him, somebody said to him at the wedding, "You're from Boston, you know about this story? You got the book?" And he called me right away when he came back to see family. We had lunch, and he said, "Look at my phone, I got six producers right here. I'm heading back tomorrow, I'm gonna get somebody interested." And within 3 days, he had 2 companies interested.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that's how it worked.
Yeah.
It's strange how things can work.
Fantastic.
Thank you, folks. If anybody would like a book, hardcovers are 30, softcovers are 20, but if you get 2 books, you get $5 off. If you get more than 2 books, you get $5 off each book. And I've been fortunate enough, I'm not patting myself on the back, but I've been fortunate enough to donate $8,000 based on my books to fire victims and fire charities and Shriners Hospital. You know, that kind of thing. So, thank you for all coming out.
Thank you.
And thank you, Foxborough.